All right, so I got some unfortunate news here as that second Amazon facility up in Staten Island, New York, has failed in their attempt to unionize and become the second Amazon labor union here in the United States. So we're going to read into some of the details here and then get to some statements from Chris Smalls on this failure, but it's important just off the bat to not let L's like this demoralize you or to really get in the way of continuing in this resurgence of the American labor movement that we've been seeing over the last number of months and years. Because listen, you're going to catch some L's along the way. You're up against one of the most powerful people in Jeff Bezos and one of the most powerful corporations in the entire world in Amazon. And of course, we know about their illegal union busting activities and all of those different factors that play into this type of thing. You're really, going up against one of the most powerful entities that exists within the country. So of course, you're going to catch some L's along the way, but don't let that demoralize you. If anything, this is just evidence that you need to double down further. But they say here with a little bit of details from NPR that Amazon labor union has failed to repeat their victory in Staten Island in an Amazon warehouse election. So they say after a breakthrough election victory at Amazon, the Amazon labor union fell far short of winning enough votes to unionize a second warehouse on Staten Island in New York. And the vote was 618 votes against the union to 380 votes in favor. And roughly 1,600 workers were eligible to vote in the election, which was held in person over 4 days last week. It's the second of 4 Amazon warehouses on Staten Island that organizers had set their sights on. So a statement here from Chris Smalls in response to all of this. He said, "Despite today's outcome, I'm proud of the workers and organizers of LDJ5. They had a tougher challenge after our victory at JFK 8, and our leads should be extremely proud to have given their co-workers a right to join a union, and Amazon Labor will continue to organize, and so should all of you." And he says, "Nothing changes. We organize. Do not be discouraged or sad. Be upset and talk to your co-workers." So listen, this is exactly the right message here that I think needs to be front and center after a loss like this, because again, you're up against one of the most powerful corporations in the world. You're up against the richest man in the world, depending on which day you're looking at it. So of course, you're going to be up against the wall in trying to form a union. And on top of that, obviously you have to deal with some of the factors that are intrinsic to a company like Amazon that make it that much more difficult to organize a lot of these workers. Now, one of the specifics that I've been hearing about that sort of separated the previous success at that the JFK 8 facility versus the LDJ5 one is that, first of all, Chris Smalls himself, along with a lot of the other senior organizers that were running this successful campaign, they actually previously worked at this specific facility, so they had those inroads and personal connections to a lot of the workers there, less so at this LDJ5 facility. But another factor that I was hearing about is that this particular facility, this LDJ5, does have a significant turnover rate, so it's obviously going to be much harder to organize workers that, this isn't necessarily their full-time job, or that, they might even not necessarily be planning on staying there for a long time. But this is not something that is intrinsic to just this specific Amazon facility. In fact, Amazon as a corporation, and specifically within their warehouses, has an explicit policy of intentionally trying to maintain a high turnover rate. So here from the Seattle Times, they say, Amazon's turnover rate amid the pandemic is at least double the average for retail and warehouse industries. So basically the reason why they want to do this is because the conditions within these warehouse facilities, where they have much higher injury rates than other warehouse facilities around the country, the reason why they want to maintain this high turnover rate, in some cases it's even over 100% on a year-to-year basis, is because they don't want a workforce that considers this to be a long-term career. They don't want a workforce that is going to actually be, pushing for long-term benefits and healthcare and higher wages, etc. They want workers who are going to be, basically cogs in a machine, and they want to take you in, work you for a couple of months, grind you into a pulp, and then discard you as if you're, not worth anything and you're not even necessarily considered a real human being. So this is an explicit policy that Amazon has been deploying for years. They intentionally maintain these turnover rates, which just make it that much harder to organize these facilities into unions. But if anything, again, it's just more evidence that you do need union representation at a lot of these warehouses so that you would have a lot more of that, job stability, which is one of the main priorities that Chris Smalls has been focusing on in their organizing efforts. Now, you also had factors like the illegal union busting activities that we've been seeing Amazon and other corporations like Starbucks engaging in on a regular basis. So just as a reminder here from Business Insider, the National Labor Relations Board accused Amazon of illegally threatening, surveilling, and interrogating workers over union organizing at a New York warehouse. So this is specific to the warehouses that we're talking about here up in Staten Island. But again, we saw the same thing play out in Bessemer, Alabama. This is just their policy is basically to engage in as much anti-union, union-busting propaganda and efforts as they possibly can legally get away with. And in many cases, as you can see, even things that they are not legally allowed to do, they basically don't care, because the punishment for illegal union-busting activities is, at worst, you're going to maybe get a fine, which obviously a trillion-dollar corporation like Amazon doesn't really give a shit about, or maybe they'll order that you have to, redo the election and do a second version of it, which again is, in the calculations of an Amazon executive, definitely worth it, because maybe you get another union election, but still the propaganda, the fear that workers are experiencing is going to stay ingrained in them. So with the illegal union busting activities and just the anti-union propaganda that Amazon has been deploying in general, obviously it's going to be extremely difficult to organize any facilities, but specifically the facility that is literally right across the road from the first successful Amazon unionization attempt at that JFK 8 facility. Amazon obviously doubled down in their union busting efforts and tactics and really focused in on preventing this from happening. So you kind of understand, given the context, that this would be a much more significant battle than even the previous one, as Chris Smalls was just saying there. But just as a slap in the face to these workers who just voted not to unionize, and as a slap in the face to Amazon workers across the entire country, literally one day after the election was held, after these voters had already submitted their ballots, Amazon came out and they said that they are ending their paid COVID-19 sick leave policy. So again, this is exactly the type of evil shit that a corporation like Amazon is going to be engaging in, waiting just a day after the election to announce this type of shift in policy, of course anticipating that it would bolster the chances of the union if workers were finding out that they were no longer given one of these basic fundamental benefits that they deserve. So, at the end of the day, again, don't be discouraged. If anything, this is just reason to double down and double down even more. We saw this play out with the Starbucks unionization attempts after that first one that took place, I think in Memphis it was. You had a second unionization attempt that ended up failing, and then after that, you see this massive wave of successful unionization campaigns at Starbucks facilities all around the country. So hopefully that's exactly what Amazon turns into, and it turns into a Starbucks situation where it does spread like wildfire across the country. But that's only going to happen if you don't allow these types of L's to demoralize you, and you use this as fuel, especially with the completely deranged policy shift that Amazon just announced with ending their COVID sick leave. It's exactly the reason why workers at Amazon facilities and workers at any capitalist enterprise whatsoever deserve union representation, because these corporations, these capitalists, they do not care about you. They do not care about your humanity. They don't care about your economic situation that you and your families are facing. All they care about is exploiting you to the maximum extent possible and extracting as much surplus value from their labor as they are able to get away with doing. So, double down your efforts and don't let this demoralize you.